What if I told you the next food crisis isn't a question of if, but when? The USDA projects another 5 to 7% food price hike in 2025, on top of the 40% increase we've already seen since 2020. Bloomberg says 1 in 3 American families are already cutting back on groceries. Meanwhile, Aldi is expanding with 225 new stores across the U.S., a clear sign they're gearing up for what's coming. That's why today, we're counting down the 11 Aldi groceries you need to stock before shortages hit. These aren't random items, they're survival staples with long shelf lives, high nutrition, and unbeatable prices. And wait until you see number 7. It could save your family hundreds. Before we dive in, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Wings of Wonder so you never miss the next prep guide. All right, let's jump in. Item 11, live-free, gluten-free pasta. Imagine this: Italy, the pasta capital of the world, actually declared a pasta crisis in 2023 because prices spiked more than 50% in some regions. That's right, pasta, the most basic staple in nearly every household, became so expensive in Europe that government officials held emergency meetings. And now, that storm is heading to the US. Here's what's crazy. Global prices for durum wheat, the grain used to make pasta, actually dropped nearly 30% last year. But instead of lowering prices, manufacturers claimed they were still using older, more expensive wheat to justify keeping prices high. In other words, pasta has quietly turned into one of the most manipulated foods on the shelf. So, where does Aldi come in? While Kroger is charging $2.29 a pound and Publix hits $2.49, Aldi is still selling live-free pasta for just $1.19 per pound. That's less than half the cost of their competitors. And it's not bargain bin quality either. Here's the secret most shoppers don't know. Aldi sources much of its pasta from the same Italian production lines that make premium brands. Different box, same noodles. Now here's why pasta should be one of your top survival foods. A single pound of pasta provides around 1,600 calories of shelf-stable energy. That means a single Aldi box costing just over $1 can literally sustain an adult for a full day. Compare that to a $5 fast food meal that's gone in minutes. And it's easy to see the math. But here's where most people get it wrong. They toss pasta in the pantry and forget about it until they open the box months later and discover it crawling with pantry moths. Don't let that happen to you. The storage hack is simple. Keep pasta in its original box, but place the entire box inside an airtight plastic bin or glass jar. You'll block out insects, moisture, and even extend the freshness years beyond the printed date. Aldi's gluten-free pasta has another hidden advantage: versatility. It cooks faster than wheat pasta, works for anyone with allergies, and pairs with almost anything: broth, canned veggies, olive oil, even peanut butter in a pinch. In a survival scenario, flexibility matters. Wrap this up in one sentence: for $1.19 a box, you're not just buying pasta, you're buying peace of mind. And when shortages hit, you'll be the one serving hot, filling meals while others are rationing crackers. Item 10, Simply Nature Coconut Oil. When the power goes out, what's the one item that can cook your food, heal your wounds, and even light your room? Believe it or not, it's a simple jar of coconut oil. Here's the situation. El Niño weather patterns slammed Southeast Asia last year, devastating coconut harvests. According to USDA data, global coconut oil prices jumped 74% in a single year, rising from about $1,425 per metric ton to over $2,480. And those costs are already rippling into grocery store shelves across the U.S., but Aldi locked in their contracts early. While health food chains and Amazon sellers are charging $13 or more for a 14-ounce jar, Aldi's Simply Nature Organic Coconut Oil still sells for just $5.99. That's more than a 50% savings. And unlike other oils, coconut oil doesn't go rancid in a few months. Stored properly, it can literally last for decades. Now let's talk survival uses, because this is where coconut oil shines. Cooking works for frying, baking, or stretching simple meals when other oils are gone. Emergency light. Stick a wick in the jar and you've got a long burning candle. First aid contains lauric and caprylic acid, the same compounds found in breast milk, shown in studies to fight bacteria, viruses, and fungi naturally. Energy boost. Unlike most fats, coconut oil converts quickly into usable fuel for your body, vital when stress and scarcity drain you. I'll never forget my neighbor Tom during the ice storm last February. His power was out for 6 days straight. He told me later that the jar of coconut oil I had urged him to buy became his single most valuable possession. He used it to fry eggs on a camp stove to keep a makeshift candle burning at night. and even to treat a nasty cut on his hand when pharmacies were closed. Here's the storage hack. Transfer Aldi's coconut oil into dark glass mason jars and keep them at room temperature, away from direct sunlight. The UV protection extends the shelf life even further. Solid in winter, liquid in summer. It's perfectly usable in both forms. Bottom line, for under $6, you're buying food, medicine, and light all in one jar. And when shortages hit, this simple Aldi essential will be worth far more than gold. Item 9. Dakota's Pride dried beans. When a crisis hits, the first shelves to go empty aren't snacks or soda. They're protein. And that's exactly why Aldi's Dakota's Pride dried beans may be one of the smartest survival investments you'll ever make. Here's the reality. USDA reports show U.S. meat prices jumped nearly 47% in 2024 alone, with no signs of relief. And while protein sources are vanishing or becoming too expensive for most families, bean production is also under pressure. Farmers planted 15% fewer acres of beans last year because corn and soy prices were more attractive. That means domestic supplies are shrinking right when demand is rising. And the global picture is even worse. Extreme weather wiped out 35% of bean harvests worldwide in 2024. From droughts in Brazil to floods in East Africa, entire growing regions were knocked offline. Translation: beans could become the next toilet paper panic of the grocery world. Now let's talk Aldi. At Aldi, a 2-pound bag of Dakota's Pride black beans sells for just $1.49. At Safeway, the same bag runs $4. At Whole Foods, the organic version is nearly $5. That's up to a 233% markup for the exact same nutritional powerhouse. But here's why beans are survival gold. 1 cup of cooked beans delivers about 15 grams of protein, plus fiber, iron, magnesium, and resistant starch that's been shown in Harvard studies to lower the risk of diabetes and heart disease by up to 40%. In other words, beans aren't just calories. They're medicine you can store in a bucket. I'll never forget what happened to my neighbor Sarah. She laughed when I told her to stock up on beans, but during a recent supply chain disruption, she drove to 7 different stores looking for beans for her family's meal prep, only to come home empty-handed. By Sunday evening, she was at my door asking to borrow some from my stockpile. Here's the storage hack. Pour your Aldi beans into food-grade buckets with Gamma Seal lids. Add oxygen absorbers, and you've got protein that can last 25 years. Rotate your stock every 6 months by cooking the oldest first. Done right, you'll save hundreds per year on protein sources while building real security. Wrap it up in one sentence? While others fight over overpriced meat, you'll be serving protein-rich meals for pennies a plate. Item 8. Baker's Corner all-purpose flour. When shelves go empty, bread becomes more than food, it becomes currency. And that's why Aldi's Baker's Corner all-purpose flour is one of the smartest items you can stock right now. Let's look at the numbers. According to the USDA, U.S. flour production in 2023 fell to its lowest level in over a decade, and 2025 is shaping up even worse. Farmers in the central and southern plains, Kansas, Nebraska, Texas, are reporting their worst wheat yields in 40 years thanks to relentless drought. That's the wheat belt of America, and when it struggles, every American family feels it. And flour prices, they don't just creep up. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, global wheat prices spiked 55% in 2 weeks. Imagine what happens now with both war and drought squeezing supply at the same time. So, what's the Aldi advantage? Right now, a 5-pound bag of Baker's Corner flour is just $1.89. Walmart charges $3.49 for the same size. That's an 84% savings on one of the most essential survival foods you can buy. Here's why flour matters so much in a crisis. A single 5-pound bag contains roughly 8,000 calories, enough to sustain one adult for 4 full days. Think about that. You're buying life-sustaining calories at less than 50 cents per day. And when commercial bread runs out, as it did in multiple U.S. cities during past disruptions, you'll be the one still baking loaves, pancakes, and pasta from scratch. My friend Maria learned this lesson the hard way. During the last supply chain crunch, her grocery store ran out of bread for 2 solid weeks. But because she had a small stockpile of flour and knew how to bake, she became the neighborhood hero. She wasn't just feeding her family, she was trading loaves of bread for vegetables, medicine, even gasoline. In her community, flour literally became wealth. Here's the storage hack. Transfer Aldi's flour into airtight containers with oxygen absorbers. Stored properly, it lasts up to 5 years. If you can source whole wheat berries, they last even longer, and you can grind them into flour when needed. Bottom line, flour isn't just an ingredient, it's survival insurance. And at Aldi's prices, it's the cheapest peace of mind you'll ever buy. Item 7. Simply Nature Raw Honey. What if I told you there's one food that never expires, can heal wounds better than some antibiotics, and might even be worth more than gold in a crisis. That food is Aldi's Simply Nature Raw Honey. Archaeologists once discovered honey jars in Egyptian tombs that were over 3,000 years old and still perfectly edible. That's the kind of shelf life no other food can match. And here's the kicker. Honey isn't just sweet, it's survival medicine. According to a Johns Hopkins study, raw honey has been proven to kill antibiotic-resistant bacteria that even hospitals struggle with. But supplies are tightening. Global bee populations have collapsed by 30% in recent years due to pesticides, parasites, and climate stress. U.S. beekeepers are reporting mass hive losses, forcing many to shut down operations. Industry insiders expect honey prices to jump 40% by mid-2025, and once again, the squeeze will hit grocery shelves hard. Now, let's look at the numbers. Aldi sells a 12-ounce jar of Simply Nature Raw Honey for just $3.99. Compare that to Whole Foods at $8.99 or specialty health stores that climb into the double digits. That's a savings of over 50%, and it's the same natural product, just without the fancy label. But the value of honey goes far beyond sweetening tea. My neighbor Dave learned this during a camping trip when his daughter got a deep cut, and they had no medical kit. He remembered reading about honey's antibacterial properties, applied it to the wound, and within 3 days, it healed faster than with standard ointment. Honey doesn't just seal, it disinfects and restores, and when it comes to energy, 1 tablespoon delivers quick-burning glucose that fuels 30 minutes of physical activity. Unlike sugar, it releases steadily, keeping your blood sugar stable, vital in times of stress. Storage is simple. Keep Aldi's honey in its original glass jars, away from sunlight. If it crystallizes, just place the jar in warm water. It will return to liquid form without losing nutrition. Wrap this up in one line. Raw honey is the ultimate crisis multi-tool, food, medicine, and trade currency that literally never goes bad. Item 6. Berman's Peanut Butter. If you had to survive for a week on just one food, what would it be? For countless families during blackouts and disasters, the answer has been simple: peanut butter. And Aldi's Berman's Peanut Butter is one of the most powerful survival staples hiding in plain sight. Here's why it matters. Argentina, one of the world's top peanut exporters, suffered a devastating drought that slashed peanut harvests by 35% last year. That ripple effect hit U.S. imports, sending peanut costs soaring. Big-name brands responded fast. Jif raised prices by 30%, Planters by nearly 40%. But Aldi, thanks to locked-in supplier contracts, they've kept Berman's at just $3 for an 18-ounce jar. Compare that to Kroger's store brand at $5 or Jif at $5. That's a massive savings for the exact same protein-packed staple. And peanut butter isn't just cheap, it's survival fuel. Each serving delivers around 8 grams of protein and 16 grams of healthy fats, providing long-lasting energy when meat becomes too expensive or unavailable. Pound for pound, it's one of the cheapest proteins you can buy. Think about it. 28 grams of protein for under $1 versus $8 for the same protein content in beef. During last winter's ice storm, a family in Nebraska survived for 5 full days on nothing but peanut butter, crackers, and water. They told me later that the high fat and calorie content kept them satisfied and energized when every other option was gone. And here's a trick most people don't know. Store peanut butter jars upside down. This prevents the natural oil separation that makes older jars messy, keeping them fresh and spreadable for up to 2 years unopened. I personally mark each jar with the date and rotate them monthly, using the oldest first. Peanut butter also doubles as an emergency fire starter. Spread a small amount on a cotton ball and the oil burns slow and steady, enough to light a stove or campfire in a pinch. Bottom line? For under $3, you're not just buying a sandwich spread. You're buying dense protein, long-term energy, and even emergency fire fuel. And when shelves clear, you'll be glad your pantry is stacked with Aldi's peanut butter stash. Item 5. Chef's Cupboard Chicken Broth. When a crisis knocks out power and fresh food disappears, survival often comes down to one thing: liquid nutrition. That's why Aldi's Chef's Cupboard Chicken Broth is a prepper essential most shoppers completely overlook. Here's the bigger picture. Last year, bird flu outbreaks swept across the U.S., wiping out tens of millions of chickens and sending poultry prices through the roof. In some states, fresh chicken prices literally doubled in a matter of weeks. But here's the overlooked lesson. While fresh meat vanished, chicken broth stayed on the shelves, quietly offering hydration, protein, and minerals to anyone who thought to grab it. And the savings at Aldi are undeniable. A 32-ounce carton of Chef's Cupboard chicken broth costs just $1. Walmart's equivalent sells for $3. Kroger, $3. That's a 150% markup elsewhere for the exact same life-sustaining nutrition Aldi provides for under $1. Now, let's talk survival value. 1 carton of chicken broth contains sodium, amino acids, and collagen, nutrients your body craves under stress. A Stanford study found that people who consumed broth during emergencies maintained 40% better energy levels compared to those living off carbs alone. And the versatility? Endless. Sip it hot for comfort during a blackout, cook rice in it for extra flavor, or stretch a can of vegetables into a hearty soup. 1 carton can transform 20 cups of plain rice into filling meals. I remember my friend Sarah during a sudden power outage last year. While her neighbors scrambled for bottled water and frozen meals that were already spoiling, Sarah pulled out cartons of Aldi chicken broth. She used them to stay hydrated, stretch her food, and even trade with neighbors. By day 3, people were offering her coffee and batteries just for a carton of broth. Here's the storage hack. Always buy the shelf-stable cartons, not canned versions. The cartons stack better, take less space, and, most importantly, don't require a can opener when chaos hits. I personally keep 24 cartons tucked away, knowing that in a real crisis, each one could buy me days of security. Bottom line, chicken broth isn't just soup stock, it's survival gold, and Aldi sells it for pocket change. Item 4. Live Well rice. If you had to pick just one food to keep your family alive for the long haul, it would be rice. Cheap, filling, and nearly immortal when stored right. And Aldi's Live Well brand rice is one of the most affordable survival staples in America right now. Let's put this in perspective. According to USDA food storage data, white rice can last up to 30 years in proper airtight storage. That makes it the ultimate calorie bank. One 20-pound bag from Aldi costs just $9. That's about 200 servings for under a nickel each. Compare that to Walmart's 20-pound bag at $13 or Target's at $14, and you start to see the power of Aldi's pricing. Now here's the survival math. A single serving of rice provides around 200 calories. That means one bag contains over 40,000 calories, enough to sustain an adult for nearly a month. And unlike canned foods or perishables, rice stays stable when packaged properly. That's why during the 2020 shortages, while Walmart and Target shelves were wiped clean, Aldi managed to keep rice in stock. But there's a catch most people learn too late: pests. Rice is notorious for attracting weevils and pantry bugs that can destroy your stockpile. I learned this the hard way when I lost 50 pounds of rice in storage. The solution? Transfer Aldi's rice immediately into airtight containers with bay leaves inside. The bay leaves repel insects naturally without chemicals, and the containers keep oxygen and moisture out. Done right, your rice becomes a rock-solid food investment. Here's why rice deserves a top spot on your prepper list: versatility. Cook it plain, add broth, mix it with beans for complete protein, or stretch vegetables and meat into hearty meals. In nearly every culture worldwide, rice has been the survival foundation during tough times. And if history repeats itself here, it'll play the same role again. Wrap it up in one line: for under $9, you're buying a month of survival calories, and maybe a month of peace of mind. Item 3. Millville oats. When it comes to survival food, few things check as many boxes as oats. Long shelf life, affordable, versatile, and comforting. And Aldi's Millville old-fashioned oats are one of the smartest buys you can make before shortages get worse. Let's talk numbers. According to the USDA, U.S. oat production has dropped by 32% since 2020. Droughts in key growing regions like the Dakotas have slashed harvests, and imports from Canada are under strain. This means oats, once considered cheap and plentiful, are becoming a vulnerable crop, and we're already seeing the price creep. At Aldi, a 42-ounce container of Millville oats sells for just $3. Compare that to Quaker oats at Walmart for $5 or Target at $5. That's nearly double the cost for the same essential calories. Aldi's oats are every bit as hearty, but sold at half the price. Now here's why oats matter so much. 1 cup of dry oats packs about 300 calories, plus 10 grams of protein and a healthy dose of fiber to keep you full longer. They're not just breakfast, they're survival fuel. You can grind them into flour for baking, stretch soups with them, or even make oat milk if dairy disappears. In stressful times, having a warm, filling meal like oatmeal can boost morale just as much as it fuels your body. I'll never forget what happened during the Texas winter storm. Families without power couldn't cook complicated meals, but oats came to the rescue. With just boiling water, people made porridge that kept kids fed and calm. One mother told me, "The oatmeal was the only thing my kids would actually eat when everything else was chaos." Sometimes, survival isn't just about nutrition, it's about comfort. Here's a storage hack that every prepper should use. Freeze your oats for 72 hours before long-term storage. This kills off any hidden insect eggs and prevents infestations later. Then transfer them into airtight containers with oxygen absorbers. Done right, oats can last up to 25 years in storage. Bottom line, for less than $3, you're buying food that fuels, comforts, and lasts. Exactly what you want when everything else runs out. Item 2. Live well canned vegetables. When fresh produce disappears, families with canned vegetables will be the ones still getting vitamins and minerals. Aldi's LiveWell canned vegetables are survival gold. USDA reports show 23% of U.S. vegetable crops were destroyed in 2024 due to floods, fires, and heat waves. Fresh food is fragile, prices are climbing fast, but canned veggies, harvested at peak ripeness months ago, lock in nutrition. USDA studies confirm they retain up to 85% of vitamins for 2 years, often beating fresh produce that's been shipped cross-country. Here's the kicker. Aldi sells LiveWell cans for just 79 cents each. Kroger, $1.35. Target, $1.50. That's nearly double for identical nutrition. And while aluminum shortages threaten other chains, Aldi secured supply years ago, meaning stocked shelves when others go bare. Storage hack. Build a rotation. Keep 50 cans, eat some each week, and restock during Aldi runs. For under $40, you've got months of reliable nutrition. In the Texas winter storm, families stretched 1 can of veggies into soup for 4 people using broth and rice. Bottom line, for less than $1, each can is a ticket to steady vitamins when fresh food vanishes. Item 1. Simply Nature Coffee. Survival isn't just about calories. It's about morale. And nothing fuels focus, energy, and even trade value like coffee. Aldi's Simply Nature organic coffee deserves the top spot. Brazil's worst drought in nearly a century cut coffee production by 21%, driving global prices up more than 40%. Coffee is becoming a luxury item. But Aldi's 12-ounce bag still sells for $5.29, compared to Starbucks at $10 or Peet's at $12. That's a 55% savings for beans roasted at many of the same facilities. Coffee's value goes far beyond the cup. In Venezuela's collapse, bags of coffee became barter currency, traded for fuel, medicine, even food. And in World War II, soldiers carried coffee rations because it sharpened performance under stress. Storage hack. Freeze unopened bags and grind beans only as needed. Done right, you'll keep morale and trade power long after shelves are empty. Wrap it in one line. For $5, you're buying energy, comfort, and one of the most tradable survival commodities on Earth. And there you have it. 11 Aldi essentials that cover everything. Rice and oats for long-term calories, beans and peanut butter for protein, broth and canned vegetables for vitamins, coconut oil and honey as survival multi-tools, flour for baking and barter, pasta for cheap calories, and coffee for energy and morale. That's the formula of real preparedness. Calories, protein, nutrition, and comfort. Aldi gives you all of it at half the cost of other chains. But here's the warning. The USDA expects another 5 to 7% food hike this year. Bloomberg says 1 in 3 Americans already cut back on groceries. Behind the headlines, supply chains are cracking and climate extremes are hammering crops. What feels cheap today might be unaffordable next month. The good news? You don't need to panic buy. Just start small. Pick up an extra bag of rice, a few jars of peanut butter, or a flat of canned vegetables each Aldi trip. In weeks, you'll have a safety net. And don't overlook the trade value. In every crisis, certain foods become currency: bread, honey, coffee, canned goods. By stocking Aldi now, you're not just protecting your family, you're giving yourself leverage. So wrap it up in one line. Prices are rising, shortages are real, but Aldi gives you the survival advantage if you act now. If this gave you value, hit like and subscribe to Wings of Wonder. Drop a comment. Which Aldi item are you grabbing first? Rice, beans, or coffee? And share this video with someone who shops at Aldi. They'll thank you when shelves run empty. Stay prepared, stay smart, and I'll see you in the next video, where we'll cover 5 foods you should never stockpile. And number 3 will shock you.